Like many people, in the morning I like to have my cup of coffee, take a seat outside and just think about life. And during my sessions of existential contemplation, sometimes the thought of how insignificant of a being I am in the grand scheme of things comes to mind. And if you think about it, here on our home planet Earth, there's so many things that are far more grand and powerful than us. If you're the unfortunate victim of a mighty kick from a horse, odds are you're gonna suffer, to put it lightly. Or if you're deep enough into the woods and you and a bear happen to lock eyes, you better pray he's chill. Taking a trip to sub-Saharan Africa will open up your eyes to the myriad of potentially dangerous animals that'll most likely game end you if you get on their bad side. For example, lions live in these parts, hippos, cheetahs, rhinos, giraffes, leopards, buffaloes, and the list goes on and on. If we zoom back out and observe our planet from afar, most of it is covered by the Big Blue. And according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, as of June 2024, only about 26.1% of our global seafloor has been mapped. However, the percentage of our ocean that we've actually explored is much lower, sitting at only 5%. Despite these facts, we know just enough about our oceans to understand the many enormous and deadly creatures that call it home. Of course, we have the blue whale, the great white shark, and giant squids, among many others. Of course, I'm only scratching the surface of what's out there, and there's so many other biomes full of life. But if we move away from our planet's land, the wildlife that inhabits it, and head towards systems and concepts to which humans have contributed that help us observe and explain our world, such as mathematics and the many sciences that exist, we'll understand their mere existence is a testament to how vast planet Earth and everything within it actually is. Why in the frick am I talking about all of this, perhaps you're thinking, and to that I have to say, just let me cook, bro. Just let me cook, bro. Just let me cook. There's 2 points I wanted to get across. The first of which is that a lot of things on Earth are capable of putting us 6 feet under. Not only are there powerful creatures, but I didn't even mention the many deadly plants, diseases, or natural disasters that exist. And in the same way danger lives on Earth, in space it's even more deadly, but I'll touch on that later. The second point I wanted to highlight is that we, as human beings, have created many systems that help us analyze and understand the various complexities that exist within our natural world and outside of it. With these 2 factors in mind, we understand our planet is massive, and not just physically speaking, but conceptually as well. And what I mean by that is, for example, if we take a look at the microscopic single-celled organism that is an amoeba, analyzing the various components that it's comprised of, such as its nucleus, endoplasm, food vacuole, reveals even more intricacies. For example, let's take a look at its nucleus, which essentially acts as the brain. If we then dive into its nucleus, so many other complexities are discovered, and mind you, amoebas are microscopic and visible to the naked eye, and yet despite its small size, everything that's working together to allow for this creature to live is anything but small. I bring all of this up because no matter how we look at it, Earth and everything in it is big and complex, and paradoxically, even by observing the tiniest of creatures like the aforementioned amoeba further supports this notion. And yet despite the fact that Earth is so large to us, realistically, it's microscopic when compared to the vast abyss of darkness that surrounds it. Earth may be big, but space is way bigger, and if you know anything about outer space, you know it's inherently dangerous to humans, which is why spacesuits are a thing. And according to NASA, quote, "Spacesuits help astronauts in many ways. The suits protect astronauts from getting too hot or cold, and also give astronauts oxygen to breathe while they're working. They also keep astronauts from getting hurt by space dust," which may not sound very dangerous, but when a tiny object is moving many times faster than a bullet, it can cause injury. Spacesuits also protect astronauts from radiation in space, and are equipped with special gold-lined visors to protect astronauts' eyes from the bright sunlight. One thing we can learn from the very existence of a spacesuit is, of course, that humans aren't built for the harsh conditions of space, which is why we're so dependent on advanced tech to keep us afloat up there. It's super cool that humans have been able to make something as complex as a spacesuit or even a space station. However, just as humans are prone to error, the same applies to the technology we create, and this now brings me to a space station called the Salyut 1. Launched by the Soviet Union on April 19, 1971, it was the world's first ever space station, and a little over a month later, on June 6, 1971, a spacecraft called the Soyuz 11 was launched, and embarking on said spacecraft were 3 cosmonauts, Georgy, Vladislav, and Viktor. The day after launch, they managed to dock the Soyuz 11 to the aforementioned Salyut 1 without any issues, and the next 23 days up in space for the men went smooth for the most part, serving as a proof of concept that one could feasibly stay in space for an extended period of time. Over the following weeks, quote, the 3 cosmonauts settled into a routine of conducting experiments, exercising on the station's onboard treadmill, and monitoring the state of their health to maximize the amount of research time the crew slept in shifts, with at least 1 cosmonaut awake at all times and working. Suffice to say, their mission was no small task, and undoubtedly had bumps along the road. It was an important mission, having paved the way for future long-duration missions in space. However, on June 29th, as their expedition was coming to an end, so too were the lives of the 3 men aboard the Soyuz 11, as following the process of undocking and upon re-entry heading back to Earth, a myriad of complications occurred with the spacecraft itself, leading to the crew becoming incapacitated, sadly having passed away in outer space. At the time of writing, the 3 cosmonauts are the only human beings known to have passed away in space, and due to the malfunctions in the tech their lives depended on, the chaos of the Great Vacuum on the outside managed to infiltrate the crew's safe space on the inside. Once again, this all occurred in 1971 when space travel as a whole was still in its infancy, and over time technology has of course improved, making space travel and extended staying periods as safe as possible, but I can't help but think about the slight chance, even if small, of something going wrong and ultimately getting stranded in a place seemingly designed to wait us out. And that's why I'm definitely not built to be an astronaut in any capacity, as I would most definitely develop the fear of a cosmic death due to the myriad of things out there that could potentially end one's life. And that's why I find it amazing that some of us actually have the guts to go out there in space, untethered to anything, just like Bruce McCandless II did, who was the first man to ever perform an untethered spacewalk. Of course, someone in his position had to have gone through extensive training in preparation for the time he would have stayed out there, which was a total of 6 hours, and he wasn't simply out there aimlessly floating around, but rather, his mission was to test out the quote, nitrogen-propelled, hand-controlled backpack device called the MMU for the first time. The MMU allowed crews to move outside of the cargo bay and perform activities away from the safety of the spacecraft. In my next video, I want to dive more into his story, as well as the horrifying loneliness that would have loomed over my head if I were in Bruce's shoes. But anyways, I hope you ended up enjoying my first video on this new project of mine, and stay tuned for the next one. Deuces.